So I've set up my basic scene. I've composed things. I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to package this into a playable project that we can then upload to the discussion board for other users to see. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to back out to my assets folder. In the last presentation, I was focused on my materials subfolder. So I'm going to go to my assets. And at this point, I have level 01. This is the project I've been working on. This is the level or the scene. This is the dedicated scene I've been working on for this project. And I'm simply going to choose File, Save, Scene, just to make sure that all the changes that I've made have been updated. And, I have this simple sphere, has a rigid body assigned to it. It runs down the ramps, knocks over the dominoes, and hopefully kind of pushes this last sphere off the edge. Now, I want this to be an app. I want to create a game. At this point, the user has no control over it. All we can do is, play and watch the simulation run. But at this point, we're playing our game or we're running our simulation through the Unity preview. Now, we want to be able to distribute this and give this to other users who may or may not have Unity. And, if we want to show somebody our project, we don't want to deliver our entire project folder. We don't want to take this project folder that's currently on our desktop and send the entire contents. What we want to do is we want to bundle and make an app that we could submit to maybe the iOS store or the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, or maybe we want to create a standalone executable file that we can run on a PC or an app for a Mac. And that process, at least for when it comes to the Mac and the PC, is fairly straightforward. Basically, as we have things set up right now, when we run our simulation, it inherits our default camera. We only have one scene in our project, but if this game was more comprehensive, if we took control over the sphere and had some user control and had some objectives, maybe we can complete this level, and if we're successful, we move on to a second level. In that case, we would have multiple levels, but for this project, we only have one level. So it's going to be fairly straightforward to publish this. And the way that we make an app is we choose to go to File, Build Settings. And when we go to Build Settings, that brings up this dialog box that allows us to publish our project to either a web player, which would be an HTML container that includes some information to allow this to run directly in a browser, or we can publish this to a Mac, or PC, Mac, and Linux standalone. Now, when we choose the PC and Mac, we have to do separate builds for PC and Mac. We're going to skip Linux because I doubt anybody's running Linux for this class, or maybe you are, but if you're running the Adobe apps, chances are you're not running the Linux operating system as your standalone architecture. So we're going to publish this first for a Mac, and whether you're doing this on a PC or a Mac, we want to, for this class, publish for both platforms because other users in this class may be using a Mac or a PC, and we want to publish both of these. So our first target platform will publish for the Mac OS X. The architecture that we're going to publish for, I'm going to leave mine set to by86. That'll be the default. And everything else I'm going to leave unchecked. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build. Now, when I hit build, it's going to look for a directory to build this in. And it's going to default to our project folder. So right now we're looking inside our default project folder. And that's, a good place to do it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this... I'm going to call it bills _ gravity project. And then maybe I'll include a note as to whether this is a Mac or a PC. So I'm building for the Mac right now. So this is bills gravity Mac project. And I'll hit save. And when I do that, it's going to publish a standalone player. It takes me to the location, which is just inside the Gravity Lab project. And this is my Gravity Mac build. Okay, now I'll go back and I'll do the same thing, but I'll change the platform. So again, if this window is not open, we'd go to File, Build Settings, and I'll choose PC, Mac, Linux, and this time I'll build for Windows, and I'll choose Build. And this time when build comes up, I'll call this same thing, build, or excuse me, bill, gravity, PC. And I'll hit save. That'll take a moment to build. Now I cannot test my PC build on my Mac because I'm not running a PC, but I've built it anyway. Now the one thing I want to point out, we have two builds here. We have our Mac build and we have our PC build. My Mac build is a self-contained projector or app file. Okay, so it contains all of the data and the executable and everything we need to run on the Mac. The PC, when we built it, it built a .exe file, but it also came with a folder that includes all of the data in the project. So in order for this app to run on a PC, we need both the .exe and the data folder. Okay, more about that in just a minute. I want to test my Mac build because that's the machine that I'm running on. I'll just double click to run my app, and the first thing that happens is it opens up and says, okay, what resolution do you want to run this at? So I can run it as high resolution as I want to. I'm going to run mine fairly low for the demonstration. I'll run this at 1280 by 1024. I can run the quality as fantastic, or I can choose the different graphics quality. The higher the quality, the more system resources that this project's going to take to run. This is a really simple project, so I can run it in fantastic. I'm going to run this windowed. If I don't check windowed, it's going to occupy the entire screen. And for the sake of this demo, I'll just check windowed and I'll hit play. And this opens up my Made with Unity project. And here's my app. Here's my standalone Mac app. And there we have it. So I'll let that run. When I'm done with this, I know that my project's running. Anybody who has a Mac can view that project. I'll just go up to my app drop-down menu and I'll choose to quit. Okay. And I've also built for PC. Now, I want to publish this to the discussion board so that other students can take a look and see what I have here. There's a couple of things that I want to do. The first thing that I'm going to want to do is that inside my project folder, okay, so I'll just close this and remind you that I'm going to go into my project folder. This is the location where I built my apps. It's in the same directory where Unity created all the other assets and library stuff. What I prefer to do is I like to make a folder and call it builds. And inside my builds folder, this is where I put all of my apps. So rather than creating these in the root of my project folder, from now on, whenever I build, I'll say from Unity, we'll choose File, Build Settings. We'll end up at this dialog box. I'll say Build. And if I don't already have a builds folder, I'll make sure that I create one on the fly. So I'll just reveal my folder hierarchy here. I'll go into my project folder. I'll create a new folder on the fly, call it builds, again, which I already have. So I'll cancel that, or I'll just choose the builds location and build whatever assets I have inside my builds. Or if the language of builds is a little counterintuitive, we could also call this apps. This is the place where I'm building all of my apps, okay, based on the project that I'm working in. So I have my apps folder. I have both my PC and my Mac build. Okay, now I want to publish this to the discussion board so that everybody in the class can see what I've built and can test this. In order to do this, what I'm going to do is I think it would be nice to have a screenshot of my project as kind of a thumbnail. So what I'll do is I'll just take a real simple screenshot. Now on the Mac, I can do this with a Command-Shift-3 or Command-Shift-4. I like the Command-Shift-4. It gives me a little marquee where I can make a selection. Take a screenshot. Now I have a screenshot on my desktop. And I'll just call this Bill's Gravity. And now I have a little thumbnail to go along with my project. Okay, for the sake of organization, I'll just throw this inside my apps folder or my builds folder. So there's my Gravity. It's a PNG. I don't like that I'm not seeing the extension on that, so I'll just Make sure to add that manually. Okay. And so now what I'll do is I'll log into the discussion board and I'll attach this. Now, before I do, I'm just going to pull out my thumbnail out for a moment. I'm going to place it on my desktop so that I can access it really quickly. What I'm going to do is, or maybe I'll leave it in. Let's not confuse things. I'm gonna inside my app folder, I have my thumbnail, I have my Mac and my PC builds. On a Mac, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click and choose to compress this folder. That gives me a zipped file. Okay, it's fairly small. It contains all the contents of the apps folder, and this is the thing now that I'll publish to the discussion board. So I'm logged into the Blackboard course site. I'm going to go to the discussion board, and inside the discussion board, there's an exercise 1 Gravity Lab forum or discussion board. I'm going to go into that discussion board and I'm going to create a dedicated thread. This is Bill's Gravity project, and this is my final project. And what I'll do is I'll just attach, I'll browse my computer. Maybe I'll browse my computer and attach to the discussion board my zip file that contains all of my assets. Okay. Now I want to make sure while this is loading, I want to make sure that as we work through these projects, inevitably questions are going to come up. Make sure that you post the questions in the appropriate discussion board. Do not, if you've created a questions thread, don't attach your final project to the question thread. I mean, certainly if it's a work in progress and it's in the context of the question that you're asking, feel free to post resources or works in progress. But when it comes to your final project, make sure it's in a standalone thread. So I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to go to Gravity Lab. I'm going to find my apps folder. And it's occurring to me that, you know, apps.zip is not the friendliest name because we're all going to be using that. So I'm going to call this Bill's Apps. And we'll try that again. I'll browse my computer. And I'll find my apps folder. Get my Bill's Apps zip, and I'll choose that. Here are the final builds for my project, for the Gravity project. And maybe I'll even include a little thumbnail here based on the screenshot that I took. So if I just include an image here, and I'll embed this directly. I'll browse my computer for the image that I want to upload. My computer sure is taking its time thinking today. So I'll go find my project folder, and inside my apps folder I'd taken a screenshot, and I'll choose that, and I'll insert that into my project. Now that is a huge file, not very user-friendly, so I'm just going to make sure that I scale that way down. Make sure that I scale that way down just as kind of a thumbnail, and maybe I'll even reduce that in Photoshop before I post it, but that should be fine. Just a little screenshot. I'll submit this, and now once that's done uploading, I have a thread that includes my final project for other students to use. Now, I'll also talk about, we're going to do this for every project that we create in this class. We're always going to publish the discussion board in the appropriate forum for each project so that other students can see the work that we're working on. In some cases, these projects might get a little too cumbersome, a little too big to post in the discussion board, and we'll talk about how we can accommodate that in future presentations. But for now, play around with this concept of the Gravity project. Any questions that you might have, make sure that you post them in the discussion board and we'll address them. Have fun with this project, experiment, review the videos as needed, post any questions that you have, and I look forward to seeing your work.